Hello and welcome back. I'm Pat, and today we are talking about the Lens Turbo 2 focal reducer. This is by a company called Zhongyi. You can see it on the side there. And if you're like me and you've made the switch from a Canon camera or another full frame kind of camera to a micro four thirds camera, you have no doubt looked into focal reducers. For those unfamiliar, a focal reducer, it takes light. It's a lens itself, and it goes in between your camera and your lens, and it takes an image that would be cropped in on a micro four thirds sensor or a smaller sensor, and it focuses it down so that you get to see everything that your lens sees. I'll put up a little graphic to kind of explain it, but that's what it does, and they are amazing because in that process, they not only add a stop of light to your image, they also reduce the grain. So you get to use your old lenses and you make the image better. So it's a win-win. However, they can be kind of pricey. And before I get into this, I just want to stress that this review is from the perspective of a hobbyist or someone who's buying a focal reducer for their own personal needs. If you're doing client work or something where the person you're doing work for expects the best quality work from you, you owe it to them to get the best quality equipment. I'll get to my thoughts on this in a minute, but the king of focal reducers from the beginning and still to this day is the Metabones. Now the Metabones is king of focal reducers. It's about anywhere from $400 to $700, we'll say on average $500. Significantly more expensive than the $150 Lens Turbo 2. And you're all smart people. I'm sure you know that there's a catch. There's a reason that it's less expensive, and I will get to that in a minute. But for now, I'm going to go over the pros of this adapter. It goes on pretty easy. That's all there is to it. Are we back? My camera died. The image quality you get from this focal reducer is fantastic. I've seen reviews where people compare it to the Metabones directly, and even when you're pixel peeping in, putting the footage under like a microscope, you really can't tell the difference. There is a small difference, don't get me wrong, but I would bet you the $350 that you could save by getting this thing instead of a Metabones, that no one would ever notice or even care. Second, the build quality of this thing is really solid. I mean, it's metal, it's good. I haven't had any problems with it. I'm not worried that my lens is gonna fall off my camera. It's a solid product. If I am gonna nitpick, it is a little bit of a loose fit. You hear that? That's not the best. And second is the way the lens attaches to the focal reducer is really finicky. It's this little knob here, you see it? And it comes off. It actually unscrews. I'm not going to do it now because it's kind of hard to put back on there. But if that were to fall off and you were to lose it, your lens is stuck on that adapter. So that is not great. But it's not a big issue if you take care of your equipment. Moving on to some larger downsides to this adapter, it is not a smart adapter, it is a dumb adapter, if you will, meaning that the lens and the camera do not communicate to each other. That means you're stuck with manual lenses. Now, you can use electronic lenses. I mean, they'll still work, light will still pass through them. Now, there are ways to set an electronic lens before shooting with a dumb adapter. I'll teach you about that in a future episode if you consider subscribing. Just keep that in mind. It's not gonna be easy to adjust your aperture or even sometimes your focus if you need an electronic connection to your camera to make that happen. And lastly, there is a notorious and, shall we say, infamous blue dot that appears when you're kind of in the dark pointing towards a light source, kind of like this setup here, but it's kind of like this blue hue that appears in the middle of your image. And I found that this is just an anomaly of like a lens flare type of thing. And if you either use a lens hood or if you even in a pinch you can cup your hand over the edge of your lens, it goes away most of the time. It hasn't been a big issue for me. And in fact, it kind of looks cool depending on the context. It depends on your taste. I did attempt to get some footage today. Unfortunately, it is a hurricane outside. All right, these conditions are not ideal. And as you can probably see, the conditions were not ideal. Luckily, I did take the Lens Turbo 2 out for a spin when the weather was a little bit nicer, and here's what that looks like. So in the end, the only real question is, are the shortcomings of the Lens Turbo 2 worth the reduced price? It kind of circles back around to what I said at the very beginning. If you're just a hobbyist, if you're not doing client work, or if your clients don't expect the best of the best from you, then I'd say go for it. It's done a great job for everything I've needed it to do. And when I've needed better, you rent better. That's all you do. For personal use, I'd say it's really hard to beat it, and I really don't think you can if price is your main consideration. But when it comes down to it, that's a question you're gonna have to answer for yourself, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Am I getting it wrong? Do you have a different opinion? Is this thing a complete waste of money and the Metabones the only way to go? Let me know in the comments down below. But that's gonna do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.